Hello and welcome to Preppy, where we revolutionize how you prepare for IELTS. I am back with another type of question in the guided reading practice series, which is summary completion. So, today we'll be taking care of this kind of a question. I am covering book 8, and this is test 2, passage 2. Okay, so we completed a list of headings, matched the headings in the last class or in the last video. We are taking up the same passage on the Little Ice Age, and if you haven't watched that video, I would request you to go back and watch that video and come back again to this video, or you can watch this video first and then go back to that video to complete the remaining questions. So this is test 2 of book 8. So now we're going to cover the summary questions. So there are two different ways in which summary completion questions can be asked to you. One is in terms of fill ups without the options, without these options, or without these suggestions. The other one is with the suggestions. So this one is slightly different. Here you are also given the options or the answers, and you just have to choose them. So let's understand the step-by-step approach and the strategies that you need to keep in mind while solving the summary completion questions, especially when the options are given to you and there are more options than the number of blanks. So if you notice, the number of blanks are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have about 9 options. So it confuses students, and there are a lot of distractors here. Unnecessary options are given, which can lead to a lot of confusion. So what is the very first step? Just like I discussed in the last video, the very first thing that you have to do is you have to read the instructions very carefully, and this applies to all your questions. So here it says write the correct letter A till I in boxes 8 till 22, which basically means you just have to write the alphabet. You do not have to write the entire word. Is that clear to everyone? So in the actual test, please do not waste time in writing the complete words. You just have to write the letter or the option there. So which is very clear from here. You have to write the correct letter and not the word. Once you've read the instructions, the next thing is you have to read the title of the summary. Read the title, because as soon as you read the title, you will be in a position to identify the paragraph. So title is needed to identify the paragraph from where this particular part is picked up from. Now try and remember this particular thing, that it can be taken, let's put a star. Summary can be taken from more than one paragraph. Which basically means that the answer to question number 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22 could be in more than one paragraphs. It could be in 2 paragraphs, it could also be in 3 paragraphs. So please be prepared, don't just stick to one paragraph alone. Moving on to the title. Weather during the Little Ice Age. So of course it is talking about the Little Ice Age and what was the weather like during the Little Ice Age, not before the Little Ice Age, not after the Little Ice Age. It is talking about the weather conditions or the climatic conditions during the Little Ice Age. So we have to look for a paragraph wherein they're discussing how the weather was during this particular period. Before we go back to the passage and locate the paragraph, we should also underline some keywords in the summary that has been given to you to make it easier for you to identify the paragraph where you will be able to find the answers. So it says documentation of past weather conditions is limited. So while you underline the keywords, you also have to think about the synonyms. What are the other words that can be used in the passage, or how will it be paraphrased so that you can identify it quickly. So documentation of past weather conditions is limited. So documentation could be paperwork, could be records, could be something related to these words, or it could be data collection, or maybe creating a proper systematic approach of writing the weather conditions. And weather conditions could be changed into climatic conditions, or how the weather was during different seasons is limited. So the synonyms for limited could be is rare, is not available, is not available in abundance. So words like those could be used. Our main sources of knowledge of conditions. So here the conditions that they're talking about are the weather conditions in the distant past are from dash and dash. So these two blanks 18 and 19 are basically talking about the main sources. So this is how you have to predict the answer or predict what could be in the blank. So it says our main sources of knowledge. So there are two sources of knowledge of conditions or the weather conditions in the distant past, and those are supposed to be written in 18 and 19. Okay, we can deduce that the little ice age was a time of, so it was a time of dash rather than of consistent freezing. Now you have to keep in mind the grammatical angle as well, the grammatical accuracy as well. So if rather has been used, so the word that comes before rather here would be the opposite of consistent freezing. Consistent freezing basically means that the weather was frozen throughout consistently. Okay, throughout the period of time it was frozen or there was snow. However, since the blank is succeeded by rather, it means that the word that comes before it will be the opposite, most likely will be the opposite of consistent freezing or something that contradicts it. So we can deduce that the little ice age was a time of dash rather than of consistent freezing. So something was not consistent, and that would come in 20. So we just read 2-3 blanks and then we go back to the passage. The last two can be done later on. And then you can have a glance at all of these options. You can quickly go through them, but you don't have to underline anything or you don't have to memorize anything. Now we scroll up and try to look for the paragraph wherein they're talking about the weather during the little ice age. And since you have already completed the question, the list of headings, you have matched the list of headings, you have a fair enough idea of what is being spoken about in each and every paragraph. So paragraph A was this one: people have always responded to climate change. So quickly glance through this and see whether they're talking about what was happening during the little ice age with respect to the weather. That's not mentioned here. Then C was how past climatic conditions can be determined. So past climatic conditions, this should ring a bell. This is how one question will help you in understanding or coming up with the answer to another question. So how past climatic conditions can be determined. So past climatic conditions, the answer most probably would be in paragraph C. In any case, we'll skim and scan through each of the paragraphs and locate the keywords during the little ice age, and apart from that, documentation of past. So a paragraph that is talking about the documentation. So in the first paragraph, they're not talking about documentation. If you quickly glance through it, you see that they're just talking about the fact that how people have always responded to climate change, how they have, our ancestors have adapted to universal but irregular global warming, and so on and so forth. So it's basically giving you the examples of how sudden climate change has affected people and how people have responded to it. The second one, B, we have already discussed it in the last video. Here they're telling you the importance of little ice age in shaping the modern world. So they're not talking about the weather records or how it was recorded or how the weather was documented. Here in paragraph C, it's talking about the past weather records, and it's also talking about reconstructing the climate changes of the past. So this should ring a bell. It is extremely difficult. Reconstructing is the synonym that is used for documenting. Documentation, past weather records is limited. So they have used reconstructing for documentation. Climate changes, they have used weather conditions in the question. Of the past is as it is extremely difficult or limited. Because systematic weather observations began only a few centuries ago. Systematic weather observations are using the satellites and everything, which was not happening before. So, records, again, this should ring a bell that here we are documenting something. There is some documentation from India and tropical Africa are even more recent. For the time before records began, we have only proxy records. Proxy records are kind of fake records, or those who are the records that are not very concrete. Reconstructed largely from tree rings and ice cores, supplemented by a few incomplete written accounts. So how were we basically recording the weather before this time, for the time before records began? Okay, how were we doing it in the past? We only had proxy records reconstructed largely from tree rings, ice cores, which was supplemented by few written accounts. Okay, it was supplemented. Supplemented basically means that that was some add-on information. We now have hundreds of tree ring records, both are correct. One is British pronunciation, the other one is American pronunciation. So don't worry if I'm mixing and matching it, I'm doing it deliberately because records and records both are the same. Throughout the northern hemisphere and many from south of the equator too, amplified with a growing body of temperature from ice cores drilled, okay, Peruvian Andes and other locations. We are close to a knowledge of annual summer and winter temperatures. Okay, I don't see these keywords in the summary, but we'll scroll down and check it once. So it says documentation of past weather conditions is limited, or it is not there are main sources of knowledge of distant past. So before these records existed that are there in the present, what are the two ways in which we were getting the knowledge about the weather conditions? Climatic shifts make no sense. Ice cores, I see it in the paragraph. Tree rings could be the answer. Glaciers is not mentioned anywhere. Interactions is also not going to make sense. Weather observations, again, weather observations or knowledge of conditions, it's not going to be grammatically correct or meaningful. So our main sources of knowledge of conditions in the distant past are weather observations. It's not making sense. So heat waves, again, it's not mentioned in the passage. Storms cannot be the answer. Return accounts, yes, it's there, but we have to look for the two main sources. Whether written accounts were just supplementing. They were supplementing the knowledge given by the other two sources, which were tree rings and ice cores. So how did we come to these answers? We basically first figured out the paragraph, which was easy to do from these keywords. It is exactly the same, or it's the paraphrased version of the first sentence of the summary question. Then we looked for the keywords. They're talking about time before records began, so in the distant past. How were they getting to know, or how were they able to reconstruct or get the knowledge about weather conditions? Largely from tree rings and ice cores, which was supplemented by few incomplete written accounts. So yes, written accounts is also given in the option, but here the keyword is main sources. So that's not the main source, it's just supplementing. Okay, I'm so sorry with the spellings. Supplementing. Okay, supplementing. Moving on to the next one, we can deduce that that the little ice age was a time of dash. So we need to see what was it all about, what was little ice age all about, rather than of consistent freezing. So we have to look for this keyword in the paragraph or the passage. So let's scroll up and check it out. So far you cannot see any of this information given here. So we can move on to the next paragraph. And also the order, the sequence is not necessarily the same. It could be above or below. So please be mindful of that as well. All right, let's read paragraph D. This book is a narrative history of climatic shifts, okay, during the past 10 centuries and some of the ways in which people in the Europe adapted to them. So it's talking about how people adapted and climatic shifts and all of that. And then it's giving the example. We read it in the last class, so I'm not going to go in the details. During these 3 centuries, they explored northern seas, settled here, and it was not a time of uniform warmth for them. As always, the Great Ice Age, there were constant shift in rainfall and temperature. So here, definitely they're talking about climatic shifts, but if we go back, they're not talking about little ice age anywhere, and they're not comparing it with what it is or what it was rather than of what it was presumed to be. So let's go back there and we also read the last sentence and underline the keywords. Within it, there was some periods of very cold winters. There were very extreme cold winters, others of dash. Others of dash here, obviously, there would be some contrast again because others word has been used. Others of dash and heavy rain. So since the word and is used, these two more or less should be similar. Okay, something that is accompanied by heavy rain would be written as the answer to this particular blank. And yet others that saw, yet others basically means again this would be different. So here we are talking about winters, then here we are talking about heavy rain. Something similar to heavy rain will come in blank 21. And yet others that saw dash with no rain at all. So here in blank 22, something would be written or the answer would be related to a weather condition which is not accompanied by rain at all. So that weather condition will be mentioned here. So this is how you predict the answer, or this is how you predict what could be the answer in the particular blank, and then you match it with the passage. So let's go up. We don't see anything related to little ice age here, so we can read the paragraph above. As I mentioned earlier, the summary questions, the answers are not necessarily going to be in the same order or sequence. So the little ice age lasted from this to this, experienced cycle of bitterly cold winters. Okay, recorded memory. All right. The climatic events of the Little Ice Age did more than help shape the world. They are deeply important. Okay. The Little Ice Age was far from deep freeze. Far from deep freeze basically means that it was not all about deep freeze, or it was not all about ice itself. However, rather an irregular seesaw of rapid climatic shifts. So it was a seesaw. We all know what seesaws are: swings, seesaw, slides. We've all seen these, right, in the parks. So seesaw is that there's up and down, okay, of rapid climatic shifts. So there were changes. It's not that, as the name suggests, there's ice in the name. So we might assume that the entire ice age was about frozen land or freezing cold weather, but that's not the case. It's saying, however, rather an irregular seesaw of rapid climatic shifts, few lasting more than quarter century, driven by complex and still little understood interactions between the atmosphere and the ocean. So here this should ring a bell because they're talking about however and rather, and here they are basically saying it was presumed that it would be about deep freeze, but that's not the case. There were ups and downs, there were changes in the climate, and there were climatic shifts. So let's go back and see what this sentence is talking about. We can deduce that the Little Ice Age was a time of dash rather than of consistent freezing. So instead of consistent freezing, in the paragraph it's written deep freeze. Okay, deep freeze. So what could be the answer? Now they're talking about climatic shifts. So that will be the answer. There are changes. No other word here suggests changes. Time of climatic shifts. So this becomes the answer. You can try and put other options in the answer. It will not make sense. So within it, there were some periods of very cold winters, others of dash and rain. Let's continue reading it. The seesaw. The seesaw is again the change in temperature or change in weather conditions brought cycles of intensely cold winters. Intensely cold winters, it says periods of very cold winters. So intensely cold has been changed into very cold winters and easterly winds, then switched. There was switch, or there was a change abrupt of heavy spring and early summer rains, mild winters and frequent Atlantic storms, or to periods of droughts, light northeasterly winds and summer heat waves. Now we have to read the rest of the sentence and then see which word fits best. So it says cold winters. So cold winters, winters is done. Others of dash and heavy rain. So something related to rain. Which word is related to heavy rains here? So cold winters and easterly winds are done. We are done with this part. Then switched abruptly to years of heavy spring and early summer rains. So summer rains is also done, and mild winters and frequent Atlantic storms or periods of drought. So something related to rain would be the word storms. Okay. Then the last one is to the periods of drought. Drought is no rain at all. Light northeasterly winds and summer heat waves. Summer heat waves, please remember that. So summer heat waves are the conditions which occur when there is no rain at all. So the answer here would be heat waves. You have to match it with the next part, right? So heat waves with no rain at all. We cannot say storms with no rain at all. That does not make sense, right? Storms are accompanied by rain most of the time, so we cannot say no rains at all. So this will not be the answer in any case. It would be heat waves, because that's what is not accompanied by rain at all. And here the answer would be storms. Okay, storms and heavy rain. So please look out for keywords like, I'll just highlight it, and yet others. Yet others means that there's a transition. Now they're not going to talk about rain. They're going to talk about heat waves or something that's contrasting. Here again they've used others, which means they'll not be talking about winters again. They've spoken about winters here, then they have spoken about rains here, then they have finally spoken about conditions where there is no rain at all. So again I'll use a different highlighter. Please keep in mind these with, okay, and here, then words like rather. So these are really important. These are connectors as well in certain cases. These help you in understanding what the next word could be, what could be the answer in the blank. All right, now I'll just summarize how you have to go about with it. So you first read the instructions, then you read the title to identify the paragraph. Then you basically underline the keywords. Underline the keywords and look for the synonyms, paraphrased version in the passage. Once you do that, you will locate the sentences where the answer has been mentioned, read those lines carefully, and then come up with the answer. Once you come up with the answer from these options given to you here, you have to put it in the blank and read the entire sentence and check for meaningfulness, number one. Number two, grammatical accuracy, whether the sentence is grammatically correct. After you put that particular option in the blank, particular word in the blank, is it making sense or not? So grammatical accuracy. And last is verify it with the passage, factual accuracy. So how do you do that? I'll give you an example. So for example, if I would have written heat waves and heavy rains. Others of heat waves and heavy rains. It wouldn't have really made sense because the word and is kind of contradicting it. So here, if we had to use heat waves, we would have come up with a word like while or however. So there's a contrast. So it will not really make sense because others is the keyword that is being used here. So others of heat waves and heavy rain would not really make much sense. We would come up with some word that is similar to heavy rains itself. So keeping that in mind, if you write the option in the blank and then you read it and you find that it's not meaningful or it's not grammatically correct or it's not factually accurate basically means you have to match it with the passage given to you. If there's a cross on any one of these, I call them M, G, F or P, whatever you like, MGF, and if there's a cross on any one of these three, then the answer is incorrect and there might be some mistake, so you have to review it again. Otherwise, if there's a tick on all of these, then your answer is good to go. So always look out for meaningfulness, grammatical accuracy. Grammatical accuracy can be looked out for by these words are. So if a word is preceded by are, or if a blank is preceded by are, for example, then obviously this would be plural, right? It would be plural. So if you notice, ice cores and tree rings both are plural. Okay, can you see it? Ice cores and tree rings. If you write for example, okay, funny enough, all the options have s in them, so all the options are plural. Let's change it to is. If it was written as in the distant past, the conditions, okay, main source of knowledge of conditions in the distant past is, then it would have been a singular, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is grammatical accuracy or keeping in mind the grammar element will help you in recognizing or identifying the answer in a better manner, or at least coming up with the shortlisted answers after eliminating the extra ones. So I'll just repeat whatever I've told you. So a blank preceded by are is obviously plural. If it's preceded by is, it's going to be singular, so on and so forth, right? So is, was, are, were, so on and so forth. So you guys understand what I'm trying to say. So keep an eye for these words, and also for words like and, with, others. These prepositions and connectors are also important. Rather is a very important connector or word here, which helps you in understanding that it will be contradicting to the consistent phrasing that has been mentioned here. So I hope I have added value and helped you in understanding how to complete or how to solve the summary completion questions. Do not look for the right answer, try to look for the keywords and then of such words that precede the blank. They will really help you out in understanding what could be the answer to those blanks. In case if you have any doubts, please write them in the comment section below. You can reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to help you out. In case if you're interested in enrolling into our one-to-one or group classes, then also you can reach out to us on the number that has been mentioned in the description box. Just go to that, and we also have attached the link to our website. You can go there and enroll for our courses, or you can just give a call on that particular number or WhatsApp on that number, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. Apart from that, if you were able to understand the strategies to solve this question type, then please give it a huge thumbs up, share it with your friends and family members who are preparing for the IELTS test, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. I'll be completing the next set of questions in the next class, which is classify the following events as occurring during ABC. So again, it's matching events kind of or matching features kind of question. Thank you so much. Have a very nice day.